I was saving body parts such as skulls and skeletons.
No, because I still was hearing that he was not the one that actually pulled the trigger.
Going with this compulsion, it was the only thing that gave me any satisfaction.
That's why you killed him.
Right.
It's always kind of crazy to think about how many killers who are still out there and have never paid for their crimes. It's even crazier to think about how many killers could have probably gotten away with their crimes forever, but end up for whatever reason confessing to their crimes and turning themselves in. The following tales tell the true stories of 3 killers who escaped, but end up telling their stories online. The first man is so proud of his ability to kill and get away with it that he ended up exposing his secrets to the world, even to the point of confessing his murder on Facebook. And then we have 2 young men that not only boldly stole multiple electronics and thousands of dollars from an innocent victim, but actually boasted about their crimes by posting a selfie online. Then, finally, we have a woman that probably could have gotten away with her boyfriend's murder if she hadn't instead ranted about all the details of the slaying online. This is 27-year-old Joe Fletcher of Ohio, and in March of 2015, he was convicted and sentenced to 46 months in prison. He had been connected with the trafficking of illegal substances and was also found carrying a handgun, despite the fact that he was not permitted one. He had pleaded guilty to carrying the handgun. He did his jail time and was eventually released in September of 2017. At this time, he was known for being one of the most hostile criminals of Akron, Ohio. It wasn't long after Joe had been released from prison that he was arrested again and put back behind bars. This was due to a domestic argument that occurred just a week after he was a free man again. He was sent to the U.S. Penitentiary in Atlanta, Georgia. Shortly after he was incarcerated again, he would end up posting a strange video to his personal Facebook page. The video had been recorded on a phone that he was not allowed to have in prison. In the 49-minute video, he not only brags about managing to get a phone into prison, but that he could get a phone in any prison if he wanted to. While he casually sips on a Pepsi, Joe claims that he was actually enjoying his time in prison. Joe did a lot of bragging in the video. He claimed that he ran the prison and was like a motivational speaker for criminals. He also talked about what he planned to do when he got released from prison. He was going to start a rap career in Atlanta and use his dark, violent past as an inspiration for his lyrics. He was even quoted saying, "Who done more shootings than me, who's still alive?" While motioning his hands as if he was shooting a gun, Joe alludes to another dark aspect of his past. He says, "I did it. Everybody knows I did it. You know, I still got love for Tay. The streets are mean like, but R.I.P. Tay. What happened is a cold game." And just like that, Joe had admitted to a murder. What he is referencing here is the September of 2010 slaying of a young man named Dante Smith. Dante, whose nickname was Tay, was just 19 years old when he was killed. He was found dead in his car, which was sitting in the driveway of his own home. He had been shot in the head. A man named Anthony Smart, a former friend of Joe's, had ended up being pinned for the murder, even though he didn't do it. Anthony, knowing he was likely going to go down for the murder, ended up taking a plea deal and pleaded guilty. This ultimately landed him 17 years in prison and allowed Joe to get off completely free. Joe knew that Anthony had covered for him. He expressed his appreciation for this and said that he planned to rap about him one day to show his thanks. He knew that if Anthony wouldn't have done what he did, he would likely be serving a life sentence in prison. Joe's biggest mistake here was probably telling the whole world the truth and not just allowing his friend to take the fall for him. The mother of Dante Smith happened to see this video and demanded that the case be reopened so that her son's real killer could face justice. Despite the fact that there was all this evidence and police even managed to find and confiscate Joe's phone, police declined to reopen the case. Joe was not charged with the murder, but was instead released from prison in 2019. The video of his confession has since been removed from the internet. Not surprisingly, Joe continued his life of crime after his release and continued to use Facebook to document his activities. His next incident occurred June 24th of 2020. There were 4 people traveling in a car with very darkly tinted windows traveling through Akron, Ohio. An officer tried to pull the vehicle over for reckless driving, but the car sped off. All 4 of the passengers managed to jump out of the vehicle and run. Joe was one of these passengers. After running to a nearby swamp, Joe started brazenly live streaming on Facebook, telling everyone that he was running from the cops. The police managed to catch up with him, and he pretended to just be an average person who was at the swamp to fish. They didn't buy it, and they ordered him to either put his hands in the air and surrender his weapon, or they would allow their canines to attack him. Joe ended up putting his hands in the air and was arrested yet again. This time, he was charged with resisting arrest, among other things. Information regarding where Joe is now and what his sentence is has been kept confidential. It's hard to imagine not only committing a crime, but actually documenting it by taking a selfie. But that's the case of the 2 young men in this story. While their names are not publicly known, their faces certainly are. That's because they both took the time to take a picture of themselves along with the money they stole. The suspects are 20 and 22 years old respectively. Here they can be seen smiling smugly while holding up large stacks of cash. They seem to think that they have completely gotten away with their crime. These 2 suspects were arrested due to suspicion of theft in 2015 after allegedly breaking into a victim's truck and stealing not only an iPad, a MacBook Pro laptop, and thousands of dollars in cash. Despite the victim's iPad having been stolen, he still had access to his own iCloud account, and he was able to easily log in. The first thing he saw was the selfie of the 2 people who had robbed him. The image went viral on social media, and the 2 men were eventually arrested and brought to justice. This is 18-year-old Nakasia James and her boyfriend. Nakasia not only stabbed her boyfriend to death, but turned to Facebook to actually boast about what she did. She spared no details when describing exactly what she did and how she did it. She claimed that her boyfriend had gotten drunk and the 2 of them began fighting. She claimed that her boyfriend had tried to attack her and she felt the need to defend herself. While she didn't say she wanted to hurt her boyfriend and certainly had no intention of killing him, she fought back against him. Her boyfriend has been identified as 21-year-old Dorian Powell. According to what Nakasia put on Facebook, Dorian had been punching and kicking her in a jealous rage. While fighting him off, she would ultimately take a knife and stab him in the chest. He would be found later, dead, lying in the bedroom in San Bernardino, California. In her post, Nakasia says that while she and Dorian were once involved romantically, they weren't actually a couple during the time of the attack. When police were eventually notified that some sort of altercation had gone on, they went to the residence where the ex-couple had once lived together. Not only did they find Dorian's body, but they also found what was left of a kitchen knife. It had been used so forcefully that the blade had actually snapped off. By this point, Nakasia had already fled the scene of the crime, and the police were wondering who could have done this. Luckily, due to Nakasia's descriptive Facebook post, it wouldn't take them long to begin to be able to piece together what had happened. Her post, which was reported to the police by one of her own online connections, was written largely with abbreviations and internet shorthands, but it's still pretty clear what she's alluding to. The first line of her post can be translated to, "Just going to tell you now before I get caught. Last night my ex was drunk of EJ and was fighting me." The EJ that Nakasia is referencing here is a type of brandy. She then goes on to say, "Was fighting me, hitting me in the face, and we was really fighting. And I got the knife and I stabbed him. Didn't think I would hurt him, but I did. And I'm on the run. Pigs looking for me." The term pigs is a derogatory term for police officers. She then goes on to try to explain why she did what she did. "God knows I didn't mean to stab him. I was mad. Expletive. He socked me in the eyes and I just picked something up. Sorry, Lord, and hopefully you forgive me. And sorry, Dorian Powell." She finishes her post. Despite the post being about her having just brutally killed her boyfriend, Nakasia uses plenty of emojis throughout the post. almost making it look as if she's trying to make light of the whole situation. Not long after her first lengthy post, Nakasia turned to Facebook yet again to discuss the murder further. Her post can be translated to read, "I didn't mean to kill my boyfriend, I swear on my life. It was an accident and I love everybody. You enjoy life, okay? I love y'all. God bless you." The more that the police looked into this case, the more they learned about these two individuals and the type of relationship they had together. They had dated for approximately 8 or 9 months before the attack took place in January of 2016. According to her friends and family, Dorian was not at all known to be a violent person, nor was he ever known for showing any aggression towards others. Police eventually came to believe that Nakasia's story of self-defense was made up and that she had chosen to attack her boyfriend simply because she wanted to, not because she had to. While using her own Facebook posts to help prove her guilt, they eventually arrested her and charged her with Dorian's murder. She has since pleaded not guilty and awaits trial in connection to the murder. Just about everyone has at least heard of Jeffrey Dahmer. He's one of the most famous, more horrific, despicable serial killers of all time. While he did not confess his crimes online, his confession is so famous and horrific, we decided to include it in the list. His jailhouse interview in 1993 shocked the entire world as Inside Edition worked to try to get inside the mind of a heartless killer. Jeffrey was known as the Milwaukee Cannibal. He killed 17 different men and boys during his lifetime and even mutilated and ate some of his victims.
I desensitized myself to it. I don't know, I went to great lengths.
Jeffrey represents evil, even though he doesn't look like a dangerous person. When you hear him discuss his horrific crimes, you'll be shocked to your core. This is a man who managed to get away with many murders for a decade. Nancy Glass is the reporter who was chosen to sit across from him and interview him. Going into this interview, she had no idea what to expect.
I wondered what he would tell me, how hard it would be to get him to discuss his horrific crimes. What I found was that he was very forthcoming. He volunteered details that may be difficult to hear.
Jeffrey appeared very well put together, thoughtful, and even eloquent during the interview.
I had these obsessive desires and thoughts wanting to control them, to, I don't know how to put it, possess them permanently.
And that's why you killed them.
Right.
He explained that he didn't kill anyone because he was angry. It was because he was compelled to. He also seemed to kill out of a need for companionship.
But because I wanted to keep them with me. And as my obsession grew, I was saving body parts such as skulls and skeletons.
It was inside this apartment where Jeffrey once lived that police would discover some of the most horrific evidence of murders that you could imagine. Preserved body parts and much more. Jeffrey is probably the last person that you would expect to become a serial killer. His early childhood, though not perfect, was relatively normal, and he was loved by both his parents. When he grew up, he became a worker at a chocolate factory. It's hard to imagine that he would one day confess to seducing and killing so many innocent men. Jeffrey claimed that his love for killing happened slowly over time.
It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. When you depersonalize another person and view them as just an object for pleasure instead of a living, breathing human being, it seems to make it easier to do things you shouldn't do.
When you listen to Jeffrey speak in this interview, one thing is very clear. This is an incredibly intelligent man. After all, that's why he managed to get away with his crimes for so long. But shouldn't a man with this level of intelligence have been able to tell themselves, no, killing is wrong? Jeffrey explained that he did know it was wrong, but after he killed once, he knew he couldn't stop himself. He would have to kill again.
The first killing was not planned. I was coming back from the shopping mall back in '78. I had had fantasies about picking up a hitchhiker and taking him back to the house and having complete control and dominance over him.
The hitchhiker in question was a man named Stephen Hicks, and he was only 16 years old. After picking him up, Jeffrey took Stephen back to his house. He then strangled him, dismembered him, and his body. Perhaps there was a point in time when Jeffrey thought that maybe he could stop himself from killing if he put himself into a different environment. So he ended up joining the army, but he had a drinking problem and would later be discharged because of it. He returned to Ohio, having lasted a total of 9 years since killing anyone. At this point in time, he started further exploring his orientation. This included reading explicit material and frequenting gay bars. His fantasies were getting stronger and stronger. On one particular night, he took a young man home from the bar, and the pair had relations. While Jeffrey had no intention of hurting him, when he awoke in the morning, the man was dead. It was as if he had gone into a trance.
And you have no memory
I
of it?
have no memory of it, but that's what started the whole spree all over again.
He would sneak the body out of his apartment in a suitcase and later discover it. Jeffrey claimed he didn't feel disgusted or guilty after killing someone.
No, at the time, it was almost addictive. It was almost a surge of energy. I wouldn't have to worry about any of their needs or anything. I just had complete control of the situation.
Jeffrey wasn't satisfied by just killing his victims. He wanted more, so he would photograph his victims after killing them.
It was my way of remembering their appearance, their physical beauty. I also wanted to keep if I couldn't keep them there with me whole, at least I felt that I could keep their skeletons.
He would even end up making a sort of memorial for his victims out of their own body parts. While there may have been a few times when he would actually take into account how horrible his acts were, there were other feelings that far overpowered any feelings of guilt.
But the compulsive obsession with doing what I was doing overpowered any feelings of revulsion.
It's almost hard to fathom how a man with such a calm, quiet personality could have possibly lured so many men back to his apartment and taken their lives. Perhaps one of the most sadistic and unbelievable murders that Jeffrey committed was that of a 14-year-old boy. This child managed to briefly escape Jeffrey after being attacked by him. He ended up in the street, badly wounded and naked. But when police got there, Jeffrey was able to convince them that he and the boy were lovers who had just gotten into a fight.
The intoxicated boyfriend of another boyfriend.
An officer can be heard saying on a phone call. After the police left, Jeffrey killed the child. There was one man who wished not to be identified, who really did manage to escape Jeffrey.
He wanted to take some pictures of my back. He hit me with a rubber hammer on my neck.
Despite his injuries, the man managed to run away. Most of the people that Jeffrey would meet would be at clubs or bars. He would take them back to his apartment, drug them, and later kill them. He would even enjoy watching the movie The Exorcist 3 beforehand, as it got him in the mood for murder.
I felt so hopelessly evil and perverted that I actually derived a sort of pleasure from watching that tape.
Jeffrey claimed he didn't enjoy feeling evil, nor did he want to be evil, but there was nothing he could do to stop himself. When asked if he still felt the same urges to kill, he said,
I wish I could say that it just left completely, but no, there are times when I still do still do have the old compulsions.
Jeffrey explained that he started having strange fantasies when he was only a teenager. He was obsessed with the idea of having dominance and complete control over another man. It was by killing 17 people that he fulfilled these fantasies. As his killer rampage continued, he became more and more deranged. He began actually consuming parts of his victims, including the heart and arm muscle.
It was a way of making me feel that they were a part of me. At first it was just curiosity, and then it became compulsive.
And then, when that was no longer enough for him, he started trying to actually keep his victims alive temporarily by drugging them. It was like he was addicted to killing, and he could never have enough. When asked if it could have been possible for him to have been stopped, Jeffrey's answer was no.
No, I was dead set on going with this compulsion. It was the only thing that gave me any satisfaction.
Jeffrey had gotten away with so much for so long that he started to get a little cocky. So much so that at one point, he even took a scared human head to work with him at the chocolate factory.
I kept the mummified head and skull of one of the victims in a carrying case in my locker at work.
It was as if he was flaunting his ability to get away with so much, but his killing spree would not last forever. Finally, after a strange encounter with Jeffrey, a man by the name of Tracy Edwards ended up contacting the police. He brought the police to Jeffrey's apartment, and before long, many disturbing things would start to unravel. Tracy had hit Jeffrey and ran from him after Jeffrey told him that he was going to eat his heart. It wasn't until the night of the arrest that Jeffrey finally realized that he had done many things that were very terribly wrong. The police knocked at the door. They were there with Tracy, and when they entered the apartment, they found pictures of the past victims. He was handcuffed and taken to prison. He knew with certainty that his days of lying were over.
It was just the realization that there was no point in trying to hide my actions anymore. The best route was to help the police identify all the victims and just make a complete confession.
As the police would investigate Jeffrey's victims, they would find that many of them were people of color and homosexual. He admitted that had he not been arrested, he would have gone on to kill again.
I can't think of anything that would have stopped me.
While Jeffrey was sentenced to over 900 years in prison, he died at just 34 years old in 1994 after being bludgeoned to death by a fellow inmate in prison. Thanks for watching. Hey, don't be shy, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Till next time, and stay safe.